Greetings to all and welcome to the Seattle Law of One podcast. The title of today's episode is Laughter and the Law of One. Generally speaking, the most well-known religions and spiritual traditions of the world are not particularly known for their sense of humor. But in the Law of One, laughter and having a good sense of humor have been mentioned many times as a really important part of our spiritual life. Why is humor so important to our spiritual growth, and how can we cultivate a good sense of humor? Let's find out. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found in the list of study groups on the L&L research page shown on your screen. We do also have a Facebook group, and we do meet twice a week on Zoom, Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time and Saturdays 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or our Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com to get on our mailing list. We send out updates once a week to let you know what we'll be talking about that week, as well as the Zoom links. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous podcast episodes, as well as Q&A sessions with Jim McCarty, Austin Bridges, Gary Bean, and Tricia Bean of the L&L Research Channeling team. If you're watching this on your TV, the episodes are divided into chapters, so you can skip ahead by chapters if you don't feel like watching the whole thing from beginning to end. If you're watching on your phone or on computer, below the title of the video, you should see a list of topics and timestamps, so you can skip ahead as you wish. As mentioned, the topic for today is laughter and the law of one. And today we're lucky enough to be joined by two of my favorite people in the world and two of the funnest people to hang out with, Ragnar and Sonia Skalvik. I met these two a few years ago through the Law of One, and since they live in Olympia, not that far from Seattle, we get to hang out every few weeks or a few months. And every time we do, it feels like the best party in town. So really looking forward to our conversation. How are you guys doing today? You want to say hi, Ragnar?
Doing great. Like you said, calling in from Olympia, Washington. I am very pleased to be here with you both on Earth, or as they say, the best party in town.
Indeed. You want to say hi, Sonia?
I am Sonia. I'm so happy to be joined with you, and I'm honored to be here during one of the best topics. I think laughter and spirituality are very much linked.
Nice. I cannot think of anybody I would rather have this conversation with you two. So thank you so much for being here. For our viewers, if you are already familiar with the Law of One, you might want to skip ahead to the chapter on humor and spiritual growth. For those who are new to the Law of One, you can think of the Law of One as a set of spiritual teachings based on the understanding that all is one and that one thing is love. The idea that all is one is something that Hindus and Buddhists have been saying for hundreds or thousands of years now already. What makes the Law of One different is that these teachings don't come to us from ancient texts written hundreds or thousands of years ago. They actually came to us pretty recently through a process known as channeling. You can think of channeling as a form of telepathic communication between humans and entities such as angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, spirits of deceased, higher self, inner planes entities, etc. Basically, a channel serves as a mouthpiece for other entities to speak through. And in this case, those entities appear to be of extraterrestrial origin. There are two types of channeling that have been done by our friends at L&L Research. Trance channeling is when the channel is in a trance state, subconscious or unconscious, as if asleep, meaning they're really not aware of the words that they are saying. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Ra back in the early 1980s. Conscious channeling is when the channel is in a conscious but deep meditative state, meaning they're only somewhat aware of what is being said. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Quo, starting in 1986 up to present day. So who is Quo? You could think of Quo as a group entity made up of three social memory complexes: Ra at 6th density, Latui at 5th density, and Hatan at 4th density. A social memory complex you could think of as a planetary consciousness. It would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one group mind, which is apparently the next step in our spiritual evolution. What are densities? You can think of densities as different levels of consciousness, different levels of reality. Imagine that the elements of water, air, fire, and earth have some primitive form of consciousness. Whatever that is, we call that first density. You can think of second density as the level of consciousness of plants and animals. Clearly a quantum leap above the level of consciousness of inanimate matter like elements. You can think of third density as the level of consciousness of humans and cetaceans like whales and dolphins. Again, a quantum leap above the level of consciousness of plants and other animals. You can think of fourth density as the level of consciousness of social memory complexes, the consciousness of the entire human planetary population merged into one consciousness. Again, obviously a big quantum leap above the consciousness of one individual person. You can think of fifth density as whatever would be a quantum leap in consciousness above fifth density. You can think of sixth density as whatever the fuck would be a comparable quantum leap above the level of fifth density. So suffice it to say, Quo would appear to be a group entity made up of three different planetary consciousnesses: Ra at sixth density, Latui at fifth density, and Hatan at fourth density. So with that having been said, why don't we look at some passages related to humor and spiritual growth? The first passage comes from Quo, and it was recorded on June 24th, 1990. Here Quo said, "The laughter quotient, shall we say, of your days should be gradually moving upward. More things should be transparent to you who have been upon the trail for a while, and therefore deeply humorous in that humor that goes beyond the smile and warms the heart. For this life that you experience is the joke without the punchline. You play the second banana to yourself as you gain perspective and see yourself as soap opera characters, cartoon characters, creatures that may be ridiculous and still be safe, secure, and undaunted. So will you lose the many, many layers of fear which cause you to armor against the delightfulness of life." Again, bear in mind, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that the words that we just read through came through the process of channeling. The person who was channeling was just saying these words as they came to them in a meditative state, in telepathic contact with what they believed to be another entity of extraterrestrial origin. They had no idea what words were coming beyond the end of one sentence and perhaps into the next. I've sat in on several of these sessions myself and witnessed them firsthand, as have Ragnar and as have Sonia. These are real people doing this. This is not generated by artificial intelligence or some form of computer. So I just really love the warm feeling that I get from this passage, and like from the phrases that I put in blue. This life that you experience is the joke without the punchline. You play the second banana to yourself. So will you lose the many, many layers of fear which cause you to armor against the delightfulness of life. It's just so cool. I mean, I've seen this idea that, laughter is a great way to chase away fear. I've just never really seen it expressed in these words or in this way, and I just really love it. Sonia, did you have any thoughts on anything here?
Second, everything you said. I do want to mention how hilarious the idea that living life is like a joke without the punchline. And I think the more you do, as Kuo says, things become more transparent. I think the more you overcome catalysts, the more you can see the purpose of your catalyst. I think the easier it is to step back and laugh at situations.
It
Uh,
is, for sure.
when you're laughing, you're not feeling fear. You lose any of that illusion of fear and anger and whatever, because laughing is joy, and it is a delight.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that sentiment expressed other places. I just haven't heard anybody refer to as my life as a joke without punchline, which I would say is a pretty fair description of it. And playing second banana to yourself, who the hell talks like that anymore? I mean, that's just hilarious and funny. Ragnar, did you have any thoughts on anything here?
My favorite line is the last line, talking about losing the layers of fear. And it does go back to what you're saying about laughter being like a light that expels darkness, with the fear being the darkness. Um, it reminds me a lot of it was one of the great stand-up comedians of all time and a great philosopher, Bill Hicks. He has a bit where he talks about how this life is just a ride, and he describes it as being very loud and very brightly colored, but it's just a ride, and how there have been people who have been on the ride many times and they've come back and they start to remember that it's just a ride, and they tell everybody, hey, you never need to be afraid because this is just a ride. And there are people who are very invested in this ride and they don't like that, and they get their furrows of worry and they say, hey, shut him up. I'm very invested in this ride, and look at my big bank account and my family, and they usually kill those people. I think he's talking about Jesus for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, or Lenny Bruce. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, Bill Hicks is a great comic. He's definitely somebody who looked at spiritual dimensions of life in ways that really haven't seen from anybody else. I think Pete Holmes is somebody these days who, on his podcast, he often talks about spiritual things in a humorous way, of course, and really delight in that. But yeah, I can't think of many others. Our friend Mort Burke, who has come to a gathering and who is a stand-up comic, has some great spiritual humor as well. Spiritually Filthy, I believe, would be the name of his special that can be found on YouTube. Any other thoughts? Any other spiritual comics come to mind?
um,
Pete Holmes is a good one. His podcast is funny.
Yeah.
Duncan Trussell is one I like too.
he does get on the spiritual
He
side, doesn't he?
does, yeah. We've seen him live a couple times, and yeah, he does bring up a lot of spiritual things that are funny.
What's his name again? Don't think I know.
Duncan Trussell?
Duncan Russell?
Trussell?
Trussell. Oh, that's right. I heard his name come up somewhere. That's right. I forgot about that. I will
He's
have
kind
to.
of underground. There, he doesn't have specials on TV, but his podcast is funny.
Nice.
Hmm.
So, unlike Bill Hicks, he is still alive
Hmm.
physically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. I will check that out. Let's go ahead and take a look at another passage. This was from September 17th, 1987, and this was Latouille speaking. And Latouille said, we wish to speak about that which is so often removed from the point of view of spiritual seekers, and that is the sense of humor, the sense of proportion, and the light touch. It would seem that when a speaker tackles the great questions of great questions of truth and life and being, every effort must be focused, and there is no time for frivolity. Yet the greatest lessons are those learned by balanced souls, and usually the balance of an incarnated soul is the product of a generous sprinkling of the small vices, excesses, and overages of your earth. This makes each seeker aware of its own imperfection and allows the seeker to see the cosmic humor of living in physical vehicles made of clay. I really love that little part in blue about the generous sprinkling of the small vices. I have studied many different religions and spiritual traditions over the last 40 years or so, and I can't say I recall seeing these particular teachings offered in this particular way from any of them. I just really love it so much. I appreciate the realness of it. And yeah, speaking of vices, what are you guys drinking today? It is a mid-afternoon on a Sunday, and I am enjoying one of my favorite beverages of tequila. Are you, I believe you are a Scotch guy, are you not, Ragnar?
And that's what I've got here. I've got a Lagavulin 10-year-old Scotch whiskey.
Oh, nice. What are you drinking, Sonia?
I'm on a old favorite of rum and coke.
Oh, nice. Cuba Libre, I believe. Yeah. Beautiful.
And cheers to the generous sprinkling of small vices.
Mhm.
Cheers, indeed. Yeah, I should probably tell our viewers this is not the first episode that I've been drinking tequila on. Sometimes I drink water, sometimes I drink tea, sometimes I'm drinking tequila. It just depends on my mood and the time of day. Uh, this is basically Schrodinger's beverage. You really don't know what's in the mug. It just, yeah, nobody knows except me, I guess. And I suppose if you hear me dropping more than the usual number of F bombs, then it's a better than fair chance that's what the mug that day. But otherwise, just love the flavor of it. Just love the how it helps me not take anything too seriously. Otherwise, yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on anything else from this passage, Sonia?
Yeah, I will say a phrase here that really stands out to me is the sense of proportion. There is something about being able to step back and see your predicament for what it is. Um, having that sense of proportion.
Mhm.
In order to balance yourself, have a little fun, have some laughter, and accept your own imperfection. And enjoy that cosmic humor of living in a a physical vehicle made of clay.
Mhm.
Isn't that a great phrasing? I really, really love that. And you don't normally think of it that way, but yeah, that is kind of what it comes down to. And it's so easy to lose that perspective.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
all three of us should probably note our enjoyers of the cannabis plant. And I think I had some a couple hours ago. I probably should have had some before we started recording, but I think I was busy prepping for the episode. But yeah, I did want to reassure our viewers that it's okay. There are many in the Law of One community who indulge in any number of different vices, and that our friends of the Confederation have said it's probably best to approach spiritual growth with sobriety. If you can achieve a good high without the chemical substances, then that's really what they recommend. But they say everybody's on their unique journey, everybody's on their own path, and everyone is unique, and they don't condemn any use of those in any particular way, I think. As long, probably the most important thing is to do whatever you do with love in your heart and to try to polarize as much as you can in service to others and unconditional love, and everything else I would think is kind of a distant second to that. Did you have any thoughts on that, Ragnar? I know
yeah,
we've had various versions of this conversation many times.
yeah, and as you mentioned with cannabis, and then oftentimes some of those small vices are mind-altering substances, which are typically frowned upon in most religious traditions. However, I find that when not used to excess, when used in such a way as to uh, alter the mind just enough to give it a little bit of a new perspective, it can kind of shift you into a different space. I kind of think of sometimes some of those things as doing brain yoga a little bit, and that can, in my experience, give sometimes a more expanded perspective on things.
That's a great way to frame it. Yeah, yeah, spiritual yoga, mental yoga. And you guys, I believe, have had more than a few experience with sacred mushrooms, which I know a lot of our friends in the Law of One community have as well. Care to share any insights that have come to you through that experience or those experiences, Sonia?
I had one, I had a sacred journey. This was years ago before I found the Law of One. And I was on a path of seeking that was more serious. And wasn't really, I was grappling with the idea of taking my spirituality serious and enjoying it at the same time. Wasn't sure how to do that. And so seeking information, I did a sacred journey and was surprised by the outcome. I had spent the 4 or 5 hours just having all, if anyone who's done a psychedelic journey, oftentimes you're just being flooded with a lot of knowledge and information. both in streaming and both from your own experiences. And I had just this in stream of all of these paradoxes in life, all these ironies, and finding myself cracking up, thinking all of it was so funny. Just all these paradoxes are so funny. And, these linking all of these experiences in my life together and seeing like all these paradoxes and finding them so funny that I was in this moment of, I was laughing so hard. I was thinking, wow, I'm insanely sane right now. I from the outside, I look crazy because I'm just crying of laughter, but I feel so sane because it's all making sense right now.
I think Bill Hicks would get that completely. Yeah, for sure. Insanely sane is a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember at the time because our neighborhood is an HOA, and it was very contentious at the beginning, and there's always one uppity geriatric that goes around with the ruler to everybody's grass and
Literally did
bitches
that.
to everybody.
He
Yeah,
literally did that.
and this guy was causing a lot of strife, and I remember you just cracking up at the prospect of how ridiculous this is in this entire situation.
And I say this with compassion. The anger he had about everyone just needing to fall in line, I thought it was so funny. Because it's ridiculous, and just trying to control other people doesn't work. It's just funny. So
It is ridiculous, I believe, by all objective measures. But I think that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about the Law of One. It enables me, at least, to look at pretty much anything that's happening in the world and to see it in a bigger, wider context that helps me make sense out of it and be able to laugh at the ridiculousness of it. If it's okay with you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, real quick. I was reminded of something you mentioned earlier about these enjoying these sprinkling of small vices and doing it with love. And I remember a couple of years ago you had brought this up in a gathering, and I hadn't thought of it that way, that you can partake in something such as cannabis. And, if you do it with love in your heart and you give thanks to this, um, this vice that, grows from the earth, that if you do it with love, it's a beautiful experience. And that really stood out to me. Just doing these things, like maybe having a sip of your drink or having a puff of a smoke and just really doing it with love and thanks.
I appreciate your saying that. Yeah. I mean, it really goes back to what we said at the beginning of the episode about the Law of One basically being a set of teachings that says that all things are one and that one thing is love. Everything that we see in the Law of One is really just some variation of that same expression. And I know for me, it made a big difference since I was concerned about the physical impact of smoking weed after many, many decades. And I think I just came to the conclusion that love is really literally all that matters. And whatever you do, if you do it with love and with gratitude, then it's okay and it's worth it. And I do usually think of that every time I spark one up. I think of it and I give thanks for the cannabis plant, and I give thanks for all who gave their life and their consciousness to provide that experience. I give thanks for the earth and the air and the fire and the water that work together to provide this experience, and give thanks for the archangels, Raphael and Gabriel and Michael and Oriel, who were part of that experience, and say that I'm doing it with love and hope that this can help me be of more service to others. And then I have a great time after that. Yeah, no, I appreciate your sharing that. And I think really there's so much in our everyday lives that can close the heart down, close the mind down, and keep us in fear. It is as if this world was really designed to keep us in a perpetual state of fear. So I think anything anyone can do that can help them choose love over fear that's a good thing. I had another passage that I wanted to look at. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to share on this before we look at another passage?
All good.
All good.
Coolio. This is a longer passage. This is from November 1st, 2008, from an entity known as Latos. who said, "Picture, if you will, yourself inside a sphere. You are an infinitesimal point in the exact center. It is often the case in your third density illusion that you extend your energies from this point in any direction that you see fit. Third density is the density of choice, and from this vantage point, you have an infinite number of choices that you can make. But there is a price for making a choice. Picture, if you will, extending from the center of the sphere, a cord that follows you. As you choose a path to explore, the cord is attached. Human often centers you once again. It brings you back to the center of your sphere. Humor is a way to ground you, to reset that which you might be taking so seriously upon your path. It is important to remember that a hallmark of the ego is to feel self-important. Unless we attempt different paths, it is easy to get wrapped up into the illusion. It is in humor that we find a way to come back to the center, oftentimes, so that we may spring forth once again with the vitality that we had in the beginning of our journey. It is one way to recoil the energy that we have expended and start fresh. Again, cannot emphasize this enough, that all of these words were coming through the process of channeling, and the person who was saying these words really didn't know what they were saying beyond the end of one sentence and maybe the beginning of the next. And yeah, it's just a beautiful visual. I like the visual of the point in the center of the sphere. I don't remember seeing anybody express this particular teaching this way, and I really like the idea of how humor can help us bring us back to the center when there are so many things in life every single day that can throw us off balance or throw us off center. This seems like a really beautiful way to look at it. Did you have any thoughts on this, Sonia?
Yes. The resetting, how laughter can reset you. And the first thing that came to mind is something I started actually when we had our first kid, who was very colicky and would need to be rocked for hours at a time. Not exaggerating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I found comedy podcasts. I would, find a way to pop it in and listen to it. So because I didn't like feeling tired, because it's my baby and I love my baby and I don't want to feel any, annoyance or anything. But it's evolved now to the point where I have this practice now where, if I'm feeling frustrated, annoyed, or whatever negative feeling I might be experiencing, I will give myself a couple minutes and I'll pull my phone out and I'll find a little comedy clip and I'll watch something. And, I'll just really try to put all my focus in those minute or two of watching this clip and I'll laugh. And it really does reset me. I feel like I'm transmuting my energy from one that's not great to one that's more positive. And I feel
I
like
think you are. I think you are transmuting energy.
And I will say my Instagram algorithm is on point now. I can find videos like instantly of comedy clips. And, it's so important, I think, to give yourself a moment and just try to find humor in where you are.
For sure. Talk about your kids a little bit for those of our viewers who are also parents of, say, younger children or parents of children with special needs. Talk about a little bit and talk about how the law of one and how humor has helped keep you centered when you feel yourself going off center.
Gosh, this is a huge point in my spiritual path is the fear I felt. Our firstborn is on the autism spectrum. At 3, she was diagnosed, and it was literally the week of lockdown of the pandemic. So the same week, I found myself going, wow, I can't find services right now. There's like nothing available. So I'm gonna have to really read up and find a way to help her, help us, and how do we find harmony in our home? And really it was all work from within. Looking back, she's she was like our guide, really. Um, we've grown so much, and I think our sense of humor grew so much as a result of finding our way with her. And we are a neurodiverse family. All four of us are, between ADHD and autism spectrum. We're definitely odd ducks here.
You were made for each other.
We are. And, I, till this day, even though there's, all kinds of acceptance, and, reading, there are questions Kuo has answered about ADHD and autism specifically that have really just touched my soul in a way that's very healing and really brings to perspective, words to how I felt and, things I'm experiencing with her. And, these days it's really like, I'm trying to find a way to help her bridge the gap of I know who she is. She is a high spiritual being. And she's stuck in this meat sack that's really confusing and around a bunch of people that they, they don't understand her. And really just trying to find a way to help bridge her and, not worrying so much that the world's going to accept her and more about how teaching her that she's exactly how she needs to be. These dual activated kids are growing in numbers. I go to the school and I like to observe and hang out, and there's more and more influx of autistic kids these days, neurodivergency in general. And the stuff they say is hilarious. One of her friends came over the other day and was talking about how they remembered a past life and was going on into detail about, so it's honestly, I think it's a joy to be here where I am amongst these children.
For those who are new to the law of one, reincarnation is really a central part of it. The understanding that every person who is on Earth right now, this is not your first time on this little rodeo, and that everything in your life, in fact, has been planned very much from day one to your last day with your higher self in order for you to learn all the lessons that you need to learn in this incarnation in order to continue your spiritual growth. And they have talked about autism a few times. Ragnar, I'm going to get to you in a minute. So thank you for sitting patiently. But as long as Sonia is on a roll with this, Sonia, would you mind sharing with our viewers a little bit about what have you read in the channelings about what we call indigo children, or about those who are autistic, that might help our viewers better understand how to work with their own autistic children?
That they're closer to the creator. Their energy is, they have this closer link to the creator. And their energies are really here to, they're bringing about a different way of being. And it's really, I see it as a mirror for others to, I think, see past what box, whatever box their thinking is, and really try to expand out and accept differences.
For sure.
Just the gist of it.
Yeah, I remember there was one session in particular where there was a question somebody asked specifically about people with autism, and they said something to the effect that these are entities who, as you said, they are what's a double
Well activated, or
yeah. Basically, they're wired for both third density and fourth density, but they're really more wired for fourth density than third density. So that's the reason why they seem like such a misfit for third density, because they're not here to be part of the world that's dying. They're here to plant the seeds for the world that's being born in a new level of consciousness, which is fourth density that we talked about. So in that sense, they're really wired for a different kind of vibration. And when you can see it that way and appreciate it that way, then it makes things a lot easier. And I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't have any children who are particularly autistic. Yeah, easy to say. I think easier for me to say. Did you have any thoughts on this, Ragnar? Like from your own perspective as a big badass Viking dude who's trying to raise girls who are, one of whom at least is on the autistic spectrum.
Uh-huh.
What's your perspective and how has humor and the law of one helped you with that?
Well, like you said, they are more wired for higher densities. They bring the higher density with them more. That was really readily apparent with Karina when she was little because, I mean, she was just so much more open. We take her to the park and she'd just run up right up to people, just strangers, and be, ask if they take it like an interrogation, but she's just trying to get to know them and being friendly and stuff. And people are not typically ready for that. She's beaming love. She's not like, it's not like they see it as overbearing, but it's not like how you might imagine. But it's still, I mean, she's just being friendly, but people kind of look at, like, the parents will be looking around like, whose kid is this? Like, and we would take her for walks in the neighborhood and she would just want to go into every house, every neighbor, and we would tell her that you can't, you have to have an invitation, you can't just go to people's houses. And she could not accept that. She couldn't understand why you can't just connect with a stranger. It was a completely foreign idea to her.
She would ask us, why not?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It's the way it is.
Yeah.
She's like, it shouldn't. Like, she would just looks at us confused.
Yeah. But
But that's a totally fourth density way to be. If you're part of a social memory complex and all of humanity is to be merged into one single consciousness, then yeah, there aren't any secrets. Of course, everybody knows what everybody's thinking. And no, you wouldn't be living in separate little boxes and you wouldn't be like afraid of going into somebody else's little box or anything like that. So I can totally see how that's a very fourth density way of looking at life.
yeah.
Yeah. And I will say our working right now is, we're trying to do it as consciously as possible where, we have to teach her kind of the rules of society, but trying to also be really delicate about, separation and just trying to let her be who she is. But also like, here's some rules you should know about. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
and I will say
Well,
her humor is outrageous.
They're funny.
She has both of our kids have such an outrageous sense of humor.
But they're also funny with not intending to be.
Yeah.
Very often. I don't, as parents, we're not supposed to, but I just can't get over how funny it is when they curse. Well, because with our kids, they're not doing it constantly. It's just like it's just a little zap here and there. They'll just throw it in just at the right time.
Yeah.
Like, just, okay, picture, if you will, father and daughter reading a bedtime story. Very tender little moment. And, it's a Dr. Seuss book or something. So I think this was Maya. She was like 3 or 4. And, it's a Dr. Seuss book and some wacky character gets introduced and, he's standing on his head or something, and I go, look at that, look, he's standing on his head, what the. And then I stop there, and then she just finishes my sentence in her little tiny voice, and she goes, what the fuck.
well, she even edited herself that much, which is pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. When our kids were growing up, I didn't usually refrain from dropping F-bombs around them. And somehow they just intuitively knew that that's not really a thing for them to do. And they generally didn't like follow my lead. Maybe because I sounded like an idiot or something like that. But I don't know. It's just funny. Yeah. Let's see. If it is okay with you, I'm going to move on to another topic. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to say about this passage or these passages?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to never mind. Wrong page.
Look at you doing your homework and stuff like that. I appreciate that. Yeah, let's see. So let's take a look at some passages related to dark humor for dark times. This was from Latwii, and this was recorded on June 2nd, 1985. A person named N asked, would you address, please, a consideration for the fact that whether there is or is not going to be an Armageddon? Latwii says, I am Latwii, and this is a very humorous question, my brother. We hope that you do not think that we have an unusual sense of humor, but it is as if one at a dance had asked us, where was the dance? My brother, you live within the Armageddon. The times, as it has been said, are indeed a changin'. You live within times that are most uncertain, in which all portions of the life experience change, and change with great rapidity. Look about you, my brother. You see the battle of light and dark in all places, in all hearts. You see the doubts and the fears. You see the prophets, the sages. You see all that has been foretold. And yes, you are at the dance. I really love how this was recorded back in 1985, which, from my recollection, was a whole lot less Armageddonish than what we're living through right now. Let's take a look at another passage. This is from a little bit more recently. This is February 10th, 2008. And here a person named Jay says, it seems to many people who have awakened that we're just trying to get out of a bad situation, get out of a prison, go someplace else. Isn't there something more than that we're doing here in this third density than just trying to escape? Quo says, it is very humorous to us that you would describe the planet of your choice as a prison, because each and every one of you in this room, and each and every person upon your planet that is alive at this time, fought tooth and nail, as it were, to get into line, to have a body and come here at this time. When one is not within the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density, it looks like the best party in town. There is a unique opportunity that you have here in third density to make rapid changes in your balance between love, wisdom, and power. And so many, many wanderers have come here with desire to serve the planet secondary to their desire to alter the balance within their own deeper natures. I really love this passage. This is probably one of my all-time favorite passages of all, and I've read like at least 400 or 500 different session transcripts. But I love that reference to when one is not within the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density, it looks like the best party in town. It's a great perspective to have when life looks like a shit show up close, as it's kind of the way it looks like to me, like that much of the time. But if you can step back or pull the camera back, as Carla often used to say, planet Earth really looks like the best party in town. It's a really beautiful thing happening at this time. It's a beautiful perspective. Ragnar, did you have any thoughts on this passage or the other one?
It's a tough school, and it's very natural, and I'm sure everyone goes through the phase of, just wanting out, just trying to escape. But I think that once you can get to the point of accepting every aspect of life here and the difficulty of it, and learning, like have been talking about, to see it for what it is and to love it, I think that's when you're getting your cap and gown. Now you're in the graduating master class here.
For sure. Yeah, that is a great way to look at it. Sonia, anything to add?
Yes, I love this session so much. And the following paragraphs after this does really paint a real picture about, I think it gives us an important perspective. It helps us understand why we're here, what we're doing. And I think when we can understand that we're here to make rapid changes, that's why it's so intense. And the fact that these rapid changes are really, it's like raining catalysts all the time. And we're just, going through it constantly. And it's really intensive. And I think that when we can understand this, we can really then understand why laughter is so important. It's like a pressure release valve. When we can really understand why we're here, the fact that we're balancing love, wisdom, and power, helps us, I think, to take a step back and see what everything for what it is. And really, if we can step back and laugh at our situation while we're in the situation, I mean, that's magic. You're really making some progress.
It is. It is. I cannot think of a better way to express it than you just did. It is very much magical. And I guess, again, this passage, for folks who are new to the law of one, it is a reminder that, as they said in the second paragraph on your screen, that each and every one of you in this room and each and every person on your planet that is alive at this time fought tooth and nail, as it were, to get into line, to have a body and come here at this time. This again goes back to the idea of reincarnation and the idea that there are many, 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 many souls who would love to incarnate at this time to have a chance to have the experience that we have. Because they're saying, as they're saying at the bottom, so many wanderers, meaning entities who have actually come to Earth from higher densities, from sixth or fifth or fourth density, chose to come here to incarnate at a lower density, partly to help the planet, to help others, to be of service to others, and to help humanity in its spiritual growth and evolution, and to help humanity as a whole to graduate and to make that leap from third density, where we're at right now, to fourth density, the density of those social memory complexes. They came here specifically to help with that, but also came here to help themselves in order to find a better balance between what Sonia referred to as those energies of love and wisdom and power, and to refine their own balancing of those energies. There are many, many souls who wanted the privilege of being able to do that. More souls than there were bodies that were able to accommodate them. So the ones who came here, presumably everyone who's incarnated at this time, is the cream of the crop. Contrary to all perceptions to the contrary, they're the people who had the best shot at graduating, at making that leap, or helping humanity. So that, again, to me is hilarious in itself. Ragnar, Sonia, anything else to add? Anything else on this?
I'll say, as difficult as it is here, when it's all said and done, I can almost guarantee any lifetime here, you'd look back on it and say it was all worth it. There's something about um, like the bittersweetness of a life like this, that brings something extra. Just if something is just purely like sweet, just a saccharine sweet, it just doesn't, I feel like it doesn't have the depth of the bittersweetness with the contrast of the juxtaposition of those things together brings. And there's a depth to it that you could only get from an experience like this. And, a lot of seekers and whatnot, and there's a lot of memes and jokes about, I never want to be back here again, I'm done, get me out of here, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, how long do you think you could spend in higher realms doing whatever they do up there? Like, I don't know, sitting around getting fanned with palm fronds and fed grapes by Cindy Crawford before you get bored. I mean, you could do it for how long? 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. You're going to get bored and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go on that noisy ride again. That was something,
I'll bet they don't have chicken wings up there. I'll bet. Yeah.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because the following paragraphs in this very session, Kuo does talk about, for them, how excruciatingly slow it is. And for us, we can do things at such a rapid pace. And that's sort of the gift.
It is a beautiful thing. And again, for folks who are new to the law of one, and I just always assume there is somebody watching this who's like kind of new to the stuff, that, yeah, the big part about third density, this reality that we're in right now, is what's called the veil of forgetting. When one chooses to incarnate to become in the flesh in this reality, they have to pass through what's called the veil of forgetting. That's how they refer to it in the Law of One, which means you forget everything that you knew before incarnation, meaning you forget that all is one. You forget that the universe is one and the universe is made of love. And you have to try to figure it out in a world that really does not give you any kind of cues that that is the case at all. It's kind of what they refer to as a closed note test. In this way, your life, your reality as you know it, in many ways is a closed note test to see if you can remember to choose love over fear, if you can remember that all is one and that every other entity you see on TV or that you meet in real life is in fact you. It is the creator in another mask. It's a test to see if you can remember that without already knowing the answers. And it's kind of cool. Yeah.
If you're on a quest to know thyself, then the veil is the greatest gift that you could be given. If you want to know what you really are at your very core, when the chips are down and you don't have the connection and the answers and the past and the memories and knowing everything about all the things you've done, that's really the best way to, I mean, I can't think of a better gift you can get than that, to come into a veiled life experience like this.
And it gives you an opportunity to experience faith or choose faith.
For sure. For sure. And Sonia, you are of Palestinian descent, if I recall correctly, and maybe just want to put that out for our viewers to give them a little bit of a different context. So everything that you have learned about the Law of One, would it be fair to say you're the only person in your family who's into this stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, they don't even know about, Hinduism, Buddhism. So I've really veered off compared to my family. And, it's um, it's taking generational trauma and really trying to put it to work and really understand the purpose of it. And it's suffering is not just for suffering. I mean, there's a reason why we are, you know.
Yeah, that whole idea of generational trauma, I think, is so hugely important. And for you have to have taken that risk to come into this incarnation and forget everything that you knew before and to become incarnated as a person of Palestinian descent with a whole lot of generational trauma and karma and violence, for you to be able to take all that and transmute it into love and peace, I can only imagine is a really huge help to all of mankind and to everyone who cares about all the war in that part of the world. So sorry, we're getting all saccharine and syrupy at this point. Shall we take a look at a couple more passages?
Absolutely. It just puts into perspective the importance of laughter.
For sure.
My family from a young age has always we've always watched comedy specials. And, I was like 5 or 6 when I first saw Eddie Murphy's Delirious. When I was too young, but, I think my family using that laughter as a release valve is a big part of my upbringing.
For sure. And I think just the fact that there are so many stand-up comics and comedians who are Jewish or of Jewish descent is really just kind of a testament to the importance of humor and getting through really, really difficult times, like the Holocaust, for example. Let's see. I think I wanted to look at a couple more passages. This is from October 2nd, 2010. And Kuo said here, "It is with great amusement that we fully express within this instrument's head, why so serious? We would highly encourage you as an exercise in learning about the self to see the humor of life's situations, to realize that your incarnations here are a beautiful, fun, entertaining game. They are music. Each action is a note in the sonata. They are art. They are dance. There is a great lightness, a freedom in each of your actions that once you become coiled down into your conscious experience in third density, they are often hard to see. We would convey the image of viewing your life like a reality TV show, a funny TV show in which you can observe yourself and instead of looking back with regret at your actions, see the humor and the entertainment it causes for the creator, the joy that each of your actions conveys, to be able to look back and laugh at the lessons learned, at how things that seem such silliness, that seem so inconsequential, form together in the most breathtaking symmetry. Another passage from August 3rd, 1980, and this was Hatan speaking, who said, "Look at your life, my friends. You are looking at a Looney Tune. It is not your fault. That is your vibration. Put the captions under the comics. Smile to yourself and proceed, for there is more. There is something behind the cartoon. There is a reality which is unnameable, unknowable, ineffable, and unspeakable. However, my friends, it can be experienced and shared, and this is where we go beyond, and I say far beyond, my friends, the wisdom of your peoples. For they do not believe that there is a possibility that your life could possibly mean anything. Many of your peoples honestly cannot conceive of a reality greater than the vanity and the folly which they now enjoy." I really love both these passages, and it is probably worth noting that that "why so serious" comment in the first paragraph of the first session we looked at. That is obviously a really famous line from the Joker character and the Batman Dark Knight trilogy, which did come out in 2008. Which was 2 years before this channeling. So I would not be the least bit surprised if Carla Ruckert, who was the channel in this case, was aware of that movie, and that's kind of what they were drawing from. Otherwise, yeah, I really love this idea of looking at your life as a reality show. It would be kind of like as if we're all Trumans in our own Truman shows. We're all heroes on our own hero's journey, and that all 8 billion souls incarnated on this planet right now are all the stars of their own reality TV shows in a life that was specifically designed and scripted by them in order to learn what they came here to learn. I just think that is a really beautiful way of looking at the world that really helps me make more sense of things and to take things like politics, for example, a whole lot less seriously than need to. Sonia, any thoughts on this passage or the other one?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind with these two is really, especially if you look at your life as a reality TV show. um, what you're doing really is you're able to step back and look at your catalyst for what it is, and when you laugh, you're accepting it. Um, when you can accept your catalyst, you're a step closer. You're moving closer to learning these lessons. Um, and something not here mentioned, but Hatan on a different session has mentioned something to the effect of laughter is similar to sunshine. And it is, when I laugh, it does feel like warmth and bright, and it's, if you can laugh at your predicament, I think you're doing good work.
That's really beautiful. I don't think I've seen that passage before. Would love to see it if you can send it to me sometime after we're done recording here. But it reminds me again that these entities which are being channeled here are supposedly of extraterrestrial origin. And unlike extraterrestrial aliens that we see in the movies and on TV, I mean, we're kind of conditioned to be afraid of them, and they're usually come across as being creepy or scary. And I can tell you in all the channeling sessions I've read, and again, I've sat in on several of these sessions myself, and I've read like at least 400 or 500 different sessions, never get a sense of creepiness, never comes across as anything scary. They never talk about anything that makes me feel afraid or concerned. They always come across as very compassionate, very loving, very advanced spiritually, very wise, and they always fill me with encouragement and inspiration and hopefulness for the future. I never feel afraid of anything they say, and that's just a really cool thing that never would have expected. Ragnar, did you have any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, the thing about the reality TV show or the soap opera, it is really about the higher perspective. So many great comedy acts are comprised of characters that are just having a terrible time throughout the entire thing. I mean, the one that just a movie that just popped into my head right now is Office Space, Mike Judge. Great movie. I work in the corporate world, so there was a time when I couldn't watch that movie. It was just too close. Like there are characters in that movie that are real archetypes of real people that are in office. Like if you work in an office, there is probably a person like each one of the characters, and it hit close. And I think in every scene of the movie they're having a bad time. They're afraid of losing their
That is pretty much how comedy works, I think. Yeah.
crisis, but the entire movie from the higher perspective of the viewer is completely hilarious. Just how ridiculous the whole thing is. And it really is just the higher perspective.
That is such a great movie. Yeah, for sure. I've only seen it once. And yet, yeah, I laughed my ass off on that because I'm not in the corporate world. And there's so many memes that have come out of that that are just legendary. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure more than a few people have taken a copy machine out into a field and beat it to death.
Or had a boss like that guy in there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I love this part in the second passage about seeing your life as a Looney Tune, who I guess only baby boomers could probably really relate to who saw Bugs Bunny cartoons and Daffy Duck cartoons. But that whole thing about putting captions under the comics really reminds me of memes. Memes are just one of my favorite comedic art forms. They are so democratic. I think that's one of the things that I love about it. You know, not everybody can be a stand-up comic, but anybody can share a funny meme that they saw and be seen by their friends as somebody who's funny, which is why I'm always sharing memes on our Law of One Facebook page and on my personal Facebook page. They're just such a great comedic art form, which I would say is a really great lead into the next set of passages I wanted to look at. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to say about these passages before we move on?
Yeah, I'm not always successful in this, but when I can, or what the times I do, when I can look at our political dilemmas here in the States, it really is a Looney Tune. I mean, it's wild, wacky, and it's not always easy, but I think if you can look at it like a Looney Tune and laugh at it, hopefully it won't get to us as much.
For sure. Well, and I mean, it really goes back to that whole thing about reality TV because we've got literally a reality TV show as our goddamn president of the United States. And as people who are regular viewers of our podcast know, yeah, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I wouldn't have voted for him in a million years. And yet, I can still look at it from a more distant perspective and see that that's fine. I think everybody who voted for him or against him or for a third party candidate or didn't bother voting, they all had their reasons for it. And every single reason I've heard, and I've heard a lot of different reasons, they all have at least a small amount of truth to them that I can acknowledge, even if I disagree with the other 95%. And like I said, I mean, it really is a matter of kind of pulling back at the world and looking at it from a distance and trusting that there is a larger process in place. And it is a good process as the Earth is moving out of third density and into fourth density. Yeah, it is literally the death of third density Earth as we know it and the birth of a new Earth in fourth density. And yes, there is tragedy involved and there is death involved and there is beauty and there's comedy involved. And to be able to see all of that, it's like, okay, I can accept that. I can go with that.
Mhm.
I appreciate your everyone's thoughts and insights on this. I wasn't planning on getting into politics here, but it is funny. It is
It is
definitely
funny.
yeah,
I
the
I
Looney
find
Tune.
It sure is. I try to step back and just see it as like a real life SNL skit
Yeah.
and just try to separate any feelings I have with, the happenings.
For sure. For sure. It is a reality TV show. It's like the worst fucking reality TV show I've ever seen, much less had to live through. And yet, I think that would be a fair way of looking at it. Let's take a look at humor and chakras as they are known in Hindu traditions, or energy centers as they are known in the Law of One. They're not exactly the same thing, but they're similar enough that I think it would be worth looking at. And before we do that, should probably do a quick overview of chakras or energy centers for those who are not particularly up on that stuff. You could say that prana, as it's known in Hindu traditions, or chi, as it's known in Eastern Asian Chinese mystical traditions, or intelligent energy, as it's referred to in the Law of One. You could say that it is this energy, the force, as it were, which flows through all of us, beginning in the earth and flowing upwards through these energy centers that you see on your screen. So you could say that the red ray or root chakra is involved in survival or sexual reproduction or fundamental vitality. It receives intelligent energy, or that chi prana, from the earth, from which it moves upward into our orange ray or sacral chakra, which deals with our personal identity, our relationships with individual other selves. We say other selves because, again, in Hinduism, as well as in the Law of One, all is one, and everybody that we regard as an other entity is really just an other self. It's ourself in another body. It's creator in another mask, another body. Yellow ray or solar plexus chakra deals with our identity in groups, our relationships with groups of other selves, whether it's family or friends or co-workers or members of our race or different political parties. It just refers to how we relate to other groups of other selves. From there, energy moves into our green ray or heart chakra, which deals with universal or unconditional love. It's the springboard to higher chakras and intelligent infinity, and relates to our ability to love all others, not just the people we already like, but including the people whose guts we fucking hate, being able to love them unconditionally. Blue ray throat chakra deals with wisdom, honesty, clarity, and inspiration, how we communicate to others, our entirety of beingness. Indigo ray or third eye chakra is referred to in the Law of One as the gateway to intelligent infinity. It's the center of the adept or advanced student, of magical workings of what they refer to as work and consciousness. Violet ray or crown chakra refers to our vibratory essence, our sum or energetic signature of ourself. It reflects our overall balance, and it's where that intelligent energy leaves the body to go out into the rest of the universe. So on September 17th, 1987, Latouille gave what I can only think of as a dissertation on humor, a long session where they talked at length about humor at the level of each of these energy centers. And they started by saying, we find that humor, and my friends, we are made of humor, is not overly valued among your peoples, and we should encourage its value. Using the terminology which we find this instrument uses, and which is also that taught to us by our teachers, we would gaze at the usage and helpfulness of humor regardless of which energy center it resonates with. So I'm going to read through the rest of what they said in that session, where they talk about how humor works at different levels of each of those energy centers we just looked at. And I'm going to illustrate them with a couple of memes at each of those energy centers, which seem appropriate to me. So Ragnar and Sonia, feel free to cut in anytime if there's anything you want to say, any observations or comments or questions about any of it. Feel free to cut in there at any time. Otherwise, I'll probably just go ahead and read through the whole thing and we can talk about them afterwards. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So here they say that humor which lays bare the awkwardness of the human body in sexual terms, the differences betwixt sexual beings, and all those things having to do with the sexual drive, are those images of red ray, which are painful for the mind body spirit complex to assimilate, especially during that part of your incarnation where you go through puberty. And here's where you know you're talking to an extraterrestrial being, because they call people mind body spirit complexes, because I don't know, that's what they call them, but no fucking human being I've ever met would refer to a person that way, but that's what they call people. So the meme here is a picture of a teenage boy and girl talking, and the guy is saying, sorry, what was that? I was too busy imagining having sex with you. I'm going to explain the pictures because I don't know if anyone is like listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or something, but these podcasts are really meant to be consumed in video form because there's so many visual aids that we use with all of these. But for those of you who are listening to it, I guess I'll explain just so you know what we're talking about. So there is another meme that shows what I could describe as a naked man or woman having sex in a park, I believe, and a duck is in the background saying, I'll just assume that neither of you have any bread. Okay, cool.
The perspective of a duck. It's funny.
Rule number one of humor, of jokes, is if it's got a duck in it, it's just automatically funny. I don't know why, but everything I've seen that had a duck in it is just fucking hilarious. They are just inherently funny, I think. Going all the way back to Daffy Duck, I guess. Latwii goes on to say there are strong needs for orange ray humor, humor about relationships, humor about living intimately with people who are imperfect. Within your density, this ray may be considered a pressure cooker with no vent, and humor is indeed a blessing. I think Sonia was referring to that pressure cooker and the vent earlier. So, yeah, this meme shows, again, a couple in bed, a man and a woman, and the man is asking, what's your favorite position in bed? And the woman says, near the wall so I can use my phone while it's charging. And there is a meme of the famous, he's probably thinking about other girls meme, a meme that has been used a billion different times with different punchlines. She, as always, is thinking to herself, he's probably thinking about other girls. And he, in this case, is thinking to himself, I wonder if I've ever bought milk from the same cow twice. I love this meme. It's got so many great captions to it, and I laugh at it every single time. Latwii goes on to say, we find you have your racial jokes, your ethnic jokes, your religious jokes, jokes at which what this entity would call civilized people do not actually wish to laugh, yet they do, and they must, because work in yellow ray has not yet been completed by the majority of your peoples, and these bits of humor are a marvelous safety valve, a marvelous way of sharing, and thus diffusing the poison of prejudice. And to illustrate this, we have the famous Lord of the Rings meme of Boromir saying, one does not simply walk into Mordor. But in this case, the caption says, I'm not a racist. Racism is a crime. And crime is something for Black people. I think that's really one of my favorite things about memes. Generally, they're taking a photo from like a movie or a TV show, and they're taking it out of context and adding another caption that makes it totally different and funny in ways that in this case really shouldn't be laughing at, and yet we are. Or there's the meme of Don Draper from Mad Men saying, they say a woman's work is never done. Maybe that's why they get paid less. Or a meme of Doctor Strange from the Marvel Cinematic Universe saying, I'm not homophobic, but I wish same-sex marriage was illegal. And I don't think LGBTQ plus should exist. All of which I'm sure we'll be seeing playing out in the years to come. Latwii goes on to say, the humor of the heart chakra is perhaps the greatest blessing of all, for it sees the human comedy in balance and all its foolishness, all its beauty. And here the meme shows the world literally on fire, and Will Ferrell saying, "Anyone want to meditate?" I'm guessing this came from Old School. Did you guys see Old School?
Oh yeah, it's good.
I haven't seen that.
I'm thinking this is the one where he's saying, "Anybody want to go streaking?" or something like that. I don't know. He's such a great comedian, though. He's done so many great movies. I just love that guy.
So silly. It's the best.
Yeah. Here's another meme of what appears to be a wolf walking on two legs saying, "Look at me. I'm a human. I pay taxes. I have depression. I'm behind on chores."
Oh, so relatable.
So relatable. Also relatable. Let's just call it a coloring book of Mandela, which is not very well colored. Saying, "I've started coloring to manage my stress and anxiety." Latwii goes on to say, "The Blu-ray sense of humor is not shared by as many among your peoples as all other forms. It is what this instrument would call the punning, the playing with words to make them dance and live and create new combinations of thought." As in the raccoon saying, "I can't stand being in a wheelchair." Or a guy next to a step ladder saying, "This is my step ladder. I never knew my real ladder."
So funny.
Oh my God. I don't know if there's anybody still watching this at this point, but I hope you're enjoying this as much as we are. And lastly, Latwii says, "The humor of Indigo Ray is silent, explosive, peaceful, and spontaneous. Yet that humor, which is also a sardonic humor, a humor in balance, and most often a humor without words," as reflected by the meme on the screen, which I'm not going to bother explaining. I'll just let it remain as a great visual. Or this one. If anyone has a cat, they should probably be able to relate to this. Or even if you don't have a cat, I think they are notorious for knocking things over. And they conclude by saying, "Do you not find this humorous that one can be perfect and yet, that one can be imperfect and yet perfect, that one can be in a body of dust and clay and yet live forever? What a marvelous maker we who are the creator. Rejoice in that endless humor of an infinite universe." I think that's the last one. Hope you guys enjoyed them as much as I did. I've gone through this slideshow many times. I've seen these memes many, many times, and they still crack me up every time I see them. Did you guys have any thoughts or clever comedic insights to offer on any of this stuff?
I just find it interesting that the body of dust and clay and that it farts and will never not be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll never not be funny. It just doesn't get any better than that, for sure. Sonia, anything to add before we start wrapping things up here, I believe?
Do you ever think of memes in your day-to-day life and like laugh to yourself?
Sometimes.
I
Yep.
I feel like the imagery associated with the laughter like that is like just we're like moving towards some form of telepathic communication of a sort. I mean,
Yeah.
we have like where I'll just mention like just the meme and he'll just start laughing because he knows what I mean, you know?
Yeah. It's a concept ball.
Yeah.
There's a
It
lot.
is. It's totally. Talk about that, Ragnar, for folks who are not familiar with concept ball. What does that mean?
It's generally used in terms of telepathic communication where like a lot of information is downloaded all at once. And there is a lot of information in a meme, just with the background of it and the context and everything. And there's a lot of times I find myself, there's a perfect meme for a situation in life. And if I could just beam that meme into somebody's head, I mean, it would just bring the room down, but you can't, you'd have to just explain it. And by then it's all falling apart. You can't do that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, concept ball, I think, is something that Gary and Trish and Austin have talked about a lot as channels, because when they are channeling these entities like Quo, they say that what they often receive is something in the form of what they call a concept ball. It's a concept, and all they can do is like take one string, like if it was a ball of yarn or thread or something like that. That's the first word or two of the sentence that they start talking about, and little by little they're able to unwind it and see the rest of the concept kind of play out. So they have some sort of idea of what it is they're talking about and where it's going, but again, I think they rarely know what words are going to come out of their mouths beyond the sentence that they're saying or the next sentence after that. In so many ways, that they said, it's kind of leap of faith. You just have to trust and not overthink it. Don't want to think about the words that they're saying. Just say the words that come to them, and that's really, it's a beautiful gift. Something I sure as hell couldn't do.
Humor can benefit so much from the impact that is afforded by communicating so much like instantaneously. Um, in my experience, the purest laughter, the purest form of humor and laughter is it's inherently joyous and loving. And it's the kind, I mean, it's rare, it's extremely rare that I get hit with one of these. And it's the kind that strikes you like a bolt of lightning and it makes you spit out your drink and keel over and maybe pee a little. And um, I mean, it's such a release. It's almost to go there. It's almost like an orgasm or like a small ego death when you're hit with one of those. It's like all the tension of being in a body in third density and all the woes of the world are instantly gone. I mean, you don't even know, you don't know your name, you don't know where you are. All of that is gone for just a moment. And there's just this pure ecstasy, really.
Mhm.
And another thing I find it interesting that I have never encountered any situation where that type of laughter was triggered from humor, which was more like had any basis in cruelty. Like the further you get towards that, the more diluted and polluted it is, and it's the more the laughter is just forced or contrived. It's that pure spark is always born of joy and love.
Mhm.
For sure. Although I would say there is one possible exception to that, and that is roast humor.
Yeah.
Roast humor is something that I've really been enjoying for a while, and that is humor that, on surface, at face value, it really seems based on meanness and cruelty and saying just like the nastiest fucking things that you can think of about your opponent or about whoever it is you're roasting. And yet, I think there is an understanding that when those things happen, it's consensual. I mean, each person is giving their permission to be roasted in that way, and when it's done, at least, like you said, there is a cathartic release in being able to take things that are usually super uncomfortable, things that people usually don't want to talk about in public, certainly not be ridiculed about it on a public stage, and yet to be able to take those things and turn it into laughter and love in its own way. So it's a really beautiful thing. Sonia, you said you've been watching some of those RBL stuff lately. Have you been? I know we all three of us watched the Tom Brady roast and loved that. Have you been watching any of that RBL stuff that we talked about a while ago?
I have. And I love the surprise of the laughter that comes along with it. And you're really, there is this idea that everyone involved, including viewers, you're kind of understanding that no one's really taking themselves that seriously. And, some of these roasts are, I mean, they hit all of the sensitive parts of being a human being, like stuff with race and stuff with like gender and I think that when you can just, like you said, there is a consensual aspect of, especially in the roast battle, but as a viewer, you can just let go and not be serious, and it's hilarious, and it really does, it's like breaking down barriers, I think. And one of
You've
my
used the word magic before, and I think that's a really accurate description here. I mean, when you watch RBL's roast battle leagues, it's like a sport. They basically took what was rap battles and they made a contest out of it, and it's been organized by Pat Barker and Brian Moses, I think, are the two people behind it. And they just take people from different cities and they are up there on stage for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so just roasting each other. But I mean, they're talking about really dark stuff. I mean, they're talking about abusive parents or absent parents. They're talking about suicide, drug, alcohol abuse, rape, you know it. They're talking about whatever's the deepest, darkest things that somebody might have. And they're able to transform it into laughter. They're able to laugh about it so that they can live with it and move on. And that's a really beautiful, magical thing. And they're fucking hilarious if you ever watch them. Yeah.
It really is. And there's sort of like they're able to tune in to the energetic thread in the room. And I really think the ones that are able to really tune in there, I think they can really be successful in that way, and they can really, like, anyone who hesitates when they crack a joke, it's seen in, I think people are like, whoa, 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 are you, but I think when things are done with love in the open heart, and they're smiling at each other and,
Yeah.
I think that it really does, I think is transmuting energies.
Transmutation. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I feel like on the surface, they appear to be deriding those things, but the underlying message there is that we accept you. Like we accept these things.
Mhm.
And
It is.
yeah.
And the rule is that they hug each other afterwards just to make sure it's understood that this was just and fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
ones where it starts to go off the rails, where it's not as funny anymore, is where those principles are not being adhered to as
Mhm.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where as soon as not everybody's having fun, then it's just not as funny
I mean,
anymore.
it's a fine line and you're taking a risk,
It is. I've seen roast battles where these are two people who clearly are friends and they arrange this ahead of time and they're really just having a fun battle of wits, you could say. And then there's other roast battles I've seen where I think these people really hate each other's guts. They're just like, it's really a playground fight. They're just really saying genuinely nasty things about each other. And that's not quite as enjoyable for me. But the Tom Brady roast was just excellent. That was really something. And Pat Barker was a big part of the writing on that as well. And wow, I mean, Nikki Glazer just like fucking killed it. And Tony Hinchcliffe, in spite of being a Trump supporter or whatever, his performance was outstanding. And Andrew Schultz, that was just such a fucking great roast. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
That it was.
Good shit.
One of my favorite comedians of all time is Jeffrey Ross, the roast master general.
Mhm.
And we've had the privilege of seeing him live, and he's so good at what he does, and you can really see like how just loving of a person he is. I mean, he's just so sweet, but he roasts people, their weight, their looks, everything, and it's so funny, and it's just, it's really breaking down barriers, and I think when we can all get together and agree to not be serious about ourselves, I really do think there's some sort of doubling effect here in raising the energy, and
For sure. For sure. Yeah, Jeffrey Ross seems such like a really beautiful soul, a really good person who just really loves helping people do all those things that you just talked about. Yeah, just a legend. Yeah. Let's see. We should probably go ahead and look at winding things down. Did you guys have anything else to say about this stuff before we start wrapping things up here?
do you have a favorite comedian?
I do, and I'm going to save that for the pop quiz if you don't mind. Why don't we go ahead and, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I did want to put in a plug here for those of you who like spiritual memes. I am another you another me. It's a great site on Facebook and Instagram. I think that daily posts really hilarious spiritual memes that are very much in line what we've been talking about. So check them out if you haven't done so yet. Otherwise, yes, I would say we are at the part of the episode where we talk about where we go from here, try to come away with some good takeaway lessons from everything that we would have talked about in these last couple hours. And I would say probably the most important lesson here is to lighten up and not take everything so seriously. And that's really all there is. I don't really think there's any more takeaway lessons than that. Just lighten up. Don't take everything so seriously. So let's go ahead and do the pop quiz. The pop quiz, of course, is what we do in all of our episodes, where we try to add a little bit of fun and laughter and levity to our otherwise serious conversations. And none of our conversations today have been all that serious. So it seems only appropriate that we should have a pop quiz on stand-up comics. As anyone who watches the podcast knows, I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy, as is Sonia and as is Ragnar, which is why we're such good friends. So Ragnar, Sonia, I am going to ask you three multiple choice questions about three of whom I consider my favorite stand-up comics. See how many of these you can guess correctly. Folks at home, anyone who's still watching this at this point, go ahead and shout your answers at the TV screen and see if you can do better than Ragnar and Sonia. So your first question is, which stand-up comedy greatest of all time is a practicing Muslim? Is it A, Dave Chappelle, B, Chris Rock, or C, Kevin Hart? What do you think, you guys?
How do I not know this? I love these three guys.
I know.
I'm gonna just take a guess and say B, Chris Rock.
Good guess. Ragnar?
All right, I'm going to second that.
Nice. Chris Rock is a good guess, but in fact, the correct answer is A, Dave Chappelle, practicing Muslim. You wouldn't know it because he never talks about it in his stand-up comedy. But I believe I saw one interview, I think it was with David Letterman on Letterman's podcast, where he talked a little bit about it. But super cool. I would say of my Mount Rushmore stand-up comics, Dave Chappelle would probably be my number one, in spite of the flack that he caught for his supposedly transphobic jokes a while back, which I don't think they were. If anybody actually watches the special and listens to the context in which he was sharing them, I don't think that was fair. But I just love his humor, and I love him as a person. He would be my all-time favorite. Chris Rock would also be in my top five, and Kevin Hart is fucking hilarious as well. Do you guys have any favorite stand-up comics? Who out of all the stand-up comics you've ever seen, and I know you mentioned Bill Hicks already, who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? Who, like, if they came out with a special, you would automatically want to watch, like, first thing?
I love Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would all of these three guys for sure, especially Dave Chappelle. I mean, I've loved Dave Chappelle since the Chappelle Show.
Nice.
Hilarious.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
I would say Dave Attell, Jeff Ross are another ones
Dave
I would
Attell's
watch immediately. And more recently, Tom Segura.
Mm-hmm.
He's a newer one that I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have not watched all of Tom Segura's specials, but I love what he does, and he's selling out stadiums big time and big venues, and he and Bert are just a hilarious pair together, and they did great also on the Tom Brady roast. They seem to have caught a lot of shit for the routine that they did, but I thought it was great. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was a nice break in what was otherwise just your kind of typical stand-up routines. I love what they did. Are you guys Bert Kreischer fans too? Do you like Bert?
I don't think he's very slapsticky in my book, and I enjoy it. It's silly.
Yeah, yeah. I really wanted to hate that guy.
I
I really wanted to hate this fucking fat, pot-bellied white guy standing up there without a shirt. I really wanted to hate him, but once I started watching his specials and I watched his story about his experiences with the Russian mafia, I thought, wow, this guy really is funny. He's a really great storyteller, and he's got a great attitude towards life. And if you actually watch his movie that he made about his bit on the Russian mafia, it's really beautiful. It's hilarious, but it's really got a lot of heart to it. It's really a beautiful story. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard his bit on that?
Mhm.
I
The
don't
machine.
recall.
The Machine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his nickname, and the Machine movie is about how he got that nickname, and it involves this encounter he had with the Russian mafia when he was a college student at the University of Florida, and I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a really great special, and it's a really great bit. And I'm blanking on the guy who plays Luke Skywalker because I've had a little bit too much tequila at this point. Mark Hamill also plays his father in that and does a really great job in that. Well, it's really, really great. It's yeah, highly, highly recommend that. Let's see. Are you ready for your second question? It is this. And by the way, you're not supposed to get any of these correct. I have designed these questions so that you're not supposed to get any of them correct, so don't feel bad about it. Your second question is, which stand-up comedy legend has or had a regular meditation practice? Is it A, Jerry Seinfeld, B, Joan Rivers, or C, George Carlin?
Hmm.
George Carlin.
Um,
What do you think, Ragnar?
I'm
No,
gonna I'm gonna go Joan Rivers.
he's so
Oh,
funny.
interesting. Nice. Yeah, I probably would have guessed George Carlin. Out of those three, he would be the one who I could most picture doing some form of meditation. The correct answer is, in fact, A. Jerry Seinfeld has been practicing TM or transcendental meditation since I think during the time that he was doing the Seinfeld show in the 90s, he was practicing it and still continues to this day. And if you go on YouTube and look up Jerry Seinfeld meditation, there's a couple times that he has talked about it,
Oh,
but obviously not something he talks about in his stand up comedy,
let me
which is
see.
super interesting. Super interesting. The guy who was so successful at making a show about nothing that it's kind of what he does in transcendental meditation. He just kind of, well, I don't even know how he does meditation, but I could imagine that a lot of his comedy insights come to him while he's in meditation or something. Did you guys ever watch comedians in cars getting coffee or the Seinfeld show?
That's
Yeah.
my favorite thing of his that he's done.
Which one?
Just his series, like of all of his thing. I know he's pretty prolific, but that's one of my favorite things he's done. It's awesome.
The comedians in cars?
Yeah, I've seen all of them. They're all really good.
Me too. I was not a huge fan of the show. I've probably only seen like maybe three or at most four episodes of the Seinfeld show. And I know it's funny. I've always obviously seen clips of it. But yeah, comedians in cars getting coffee. I really wish he would do that again. That was just so hilarious in a beautiful way. And I watched every episode more than a few times, really, and enjoyed them. What's more fun than two comedians talking about comedy? I can't think of anything more enjoyable than that. It was great.
Yeah. Two
Did you
comedians.
see Unfrosted, the Pop Tart thing on Netflix?
Not yet. I have it saved, but I haven't gone there yet. Have you seen it?
It's really funny. It's really good. Yeah, it's really well done. And there's so many great comedians, and they're also it's a really great movie. That seems like I think it started as a bit. I think he had a bit about Pop Tarts, kind of the space race between Kellogg's and Post to create a toaster friendly pastry, and they somehow he found somebody who convinced him that it would make a good movie, and it's really funny. I've seen it a couple times, two or three times. Yeah.
Watch that.
Are you ready for your last question? This one, I think you're just going to be guessing on this one too. Which stand-up comedy great has a pizza named after him or her at the pizzeria voted best in Seattle in 2024? Was it A, Norm Macdonald, B, Amy Schumer, or C, Jim Gaffigan?
Okay, I know this one. I've heard about this.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's Norm Macdonald.
I was just gonna say Norm
I
Macdonald
think
because
it is.
I like him the most of the three on the screen.
You're choosing.
You were supposed to guess Jim Gaffigan. You were supposed to go for Jim Gaffigan. But you are correct. Yeah, Norm Macdonald. Yeah, it is called the Normie McDonald Pizza, and it is at Stevie's Famous Pizza in Seattle. I'm giving free advertisement. They did not pay for this, but it is a fucking delicious pizza. They have a place in Burien, south of Seattle, and in Beacon Hill. And the Normie McDonald is a really good pizza. It's got capicola, which is kind of a sliced dried meat, kind of like pancetta or whatever the fuck else they make. And it's got burrata cheese on it, which is a really creamy cheese. And it's got a little bit of drizzle of honey on it. I don't think I've ever seen a pizza like that anywhere else, but it is kind of cheesy, kind of salty, kind of sweet, kind of like Norm Macdonald was, who was definitely one of my all-time favorite comedians ever. It's a great pizza. Are you guys Norm fans?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I think now that I remember, I think you mentioned it a good while back about this, and maybe that's where I'm remembering it from.
Good.
Give yourself a win.
If you live in Seattle, check it out. I think it's a really great pizza. And it's kind of like a New York style. It's got a really nice crust that's kind of got some crunch and some chew in it. And it's a good fold and all that good stuff for sure. Have you guys ever seen one of my favorite Norm Macdonald bits was from his last appearance on the David Letterman show. Have you guys seen this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I've seen this one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's a really great bit. I mean, he was on there for a while. This, I think, was when Letterman was kind of like getting ready to retire and end his run on CBS. And Norm Macdonald, who appeared on there many, many times and was a favorite guest of David Letterman's, he did a fairly long stand-up routine, and this was just one part of it. But I think it is one that well, they referenced it when he was on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, so it might be familiar to you when you see it. But it's one that a lot of stand-up comics point to as one of the best bits ever. And for students of the Law of One, you have a little bit different insight into it at the end that we could talk about later. Otherwise, yeah, check this out. This is one of my favorite comedy bits of all time.
2 minutes and 22 seconds long.
But I watch the TV, I watch the news, make you afraid, the news, you know? Put all these stories on, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, you know, try to scare you, you know? But does it ever really scare you? Like, you ever wake up in the middle of the night, North Korea! That little tiny country across the ocean. I wonder if they'll get me. Plus, didn't MASH settle that like 20 years ago? Why'd I have to watch that stupid show? There is one country that worries me, though. Not Iraq, not Iran, not North Korea. The only country that really worries me is the country of Germany. I don't know if you guys are history buffs or not, but... in the early part of the previous century, Germany decided to go to war. And who did they go to war with? The world. That had never been tried before. And so you figure that would take about 5 seconds for the world to win, but no, it was actually close. Then about 30 years pass, and Germany decides again to go to war, and again it chooses as its enemy the world. And this time they have that guy, Schrankly, Crankly, that guy, and I'm not even going to dignify him by saying his name, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But you'd think at that point the world will go, listen, Germany, here's the deal. You don't get to be a country no more on account of you keep attacking the world. You know, What do you think, you're Mars or something?
Oh, dear God. I have seen that video clip a million times, and it still makes me laugh every time he says, the world. Oh, my God. Yeah.
That was amazing. I can't believe I've never seen that. That was hilarious.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said he labored over that. I mean, every single word, every single phrase, he really parsed that out and chose that very carefully to get the effect. And you can see the payoff is just, it's fucking hilarious. And again, for students of the Law of One who are aware somewhat of the history of Mars and Earth, that bit takes on a whole different meaning, which we're not even going to try to unpack here. We'll save that for another episode. You can find the episode on War and Peace of our podcast series, and we do actually talk a little bit about the history of Mars there. You can check it out. Otherwise, oh my gosh, you too. It has been such a joy and so much fun hanging out with you today. This is what I got to do to get to hang out with you guys, since I haven't hung out in person in like 6 fucking months or something like that. So really enjoyed our time together. Do you guys have any last thoughts, reflections, anything you want to say in the way of farewells to our viewers before we say goodbye? Ragnar?
Nothing much. Been a good ride. Everybody lighten up and have fun.
Indeed. Sonia?
Just remember why you're here and that catalysts are useful, and just try to laugh about it. And it was an honor and privilege to be joined with you, Jonathan, especially with this topic. Always a wonderful time.
Hanging out with you guys is always the best party in town. I would do that any day of the week. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all our friends at L&L Research, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. For everyone who's still watching this, and the YouTube analytics say that it's about 10% of the viewers who are still watching all the way to the end. So for the 10 of you who are still watching at this point, you're really special. You are elite. You are better than everybody else. And I want you to remember that. And thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. And for all who are, yes, everyone who's watching in the near and distant future, we're sending you our love light and we are receiving yours. Until next time, in the love and light of the one infinite creator. Adonai, namaste. We'll see you.
Hey.